Is your Canon EOS R5 Mark II forgetting your menu settings, giving you a sense of déjà vu? If so, you're certainly not alone, and this isn't the only issue facing early adopters. But don't worry, a firmware update's on the way. Details coming up, but first, please subscribe to this channel. It doesn't cost you anything, helps this channel grow, and keeps you up to date on the latest camera coverage. I've been very busy with life, shooting the latest product announcement by Angelbird of 2 CF Express Type A cards, and getting used to the new capabilities found in the Canon EOS R5 Mark II. I've finally got all the custom modes set up, but there is some fine-tuning left to do. And I've finally gotten used to the new autofocus system. And I know, I'm old, I just turned 54 this year, but I could have sworn that I actually customized the buttons on the R5 Mark II, specifically the depth of field button, the one right in front of the camera. I use this one to constantly toggle the zebras on and off. I find it's a very useful feature. I set it to 35%, just zebra 1. But sometimes, depending on what I'm looking at, I just can't get a good, well, sense of the scene with the zebras on, so I turn them off. So I'm pretty sure I made the setting, but I went back and it was back to the original, back to the default. This happened a couple of times with different settings, and I kind of got the impression that I was living out the plot line to the movie Inception. You see, last week I recorded some simple tests. I thought I was recording 4K fine, 10-bit 422 H.264 with Canon Log 2. But I wasn't. I was recording everything else. I was recording 10-bit 422 H.264, 10-bit 422. You know, everything that really matters, everything else was set up, with the exception of 4K fine. So I figured it was down to one of two possibilities. I had fat-fingered the controls, which sometimes does happen. Sometimes I hit the wrong wheel instead of the scroll wheel. I hit one of the two top wheels and, of course, caused the settings to change. The other option is, well, I just completely forgot. My memory's all muddled up. And then I realized something. Well, hold on a minute here. I remember that when I'd set up the R5 Mark II the very first time, if I put in the LPE6NH batteries, these guys right here, 4K fine isn't an option. So I quickly turned the camera off. I unplugged the battery hatch door, ejected the battery, and guess which battery was in there? No, it wasn't this one. It's the LPE6P battery. So I was puzzled. I didn't believe that the problem was with me at all. In fact, it looked like the problem was related to the camera, the R5 Mark II itself. Then I caught an email from a viewer stating that he had made extensive changes to the menus, including button assignments, the same thing I had done. And he set auto update in the custom shooting mode to off because he always likes to come back to the same place. So it seems like these issues aren't related to just an old man, but another viewer as well. So I kept this in mind last night as I went into the button assignments. I wanted to customize, remember that depth of field button I was telling you about at the beginning of the video? I went to set that up to, well, set it to zebras. Or at least I thought I did. I pressed the depth of field button expecting it to turn off zebras or turn it on. Instead, it brought up the audio status screen. I was having a serious case of déjà vu. I was beginning to feel a little bit like Tom Cruise in The Edge of Tomorrow, but with way less confidence and a whole lot more button smashing. You see, I was in menu mode. I was in manual mode, and manual mode is where I do most of my run and gun shooting. Now, if I'm doing product shots, well, that's C1, custom mode 1. If I'm shooting for the studio, whether it's this camera here or the R5 Mark II, that's C2. And then, of course, C3, I forgot what I set that one up to, but it's probably 4K HQ. So instead of going through all the menu settings and changing things, I can just switch back and forth. That works really well for me. So I was really puzzled. But just to make sure I didn't save that setting in one of the custom modes, I checked custom mode 1. Audio status comes up. Then I checked custom mode 2. Audio status comes up. And finally, custom mode 3. Audio status comes up. So clearly the R5 Mark II isn't saving all of our settings for some reason. And I think it has something to do with the new AI capabilities of the R5 Mark II. That, and it feels that I have some sort of commitment issues. Nevertheless, the R5 Mark II stored Canon Log 2. It stored the frame rate, intra, along with H.264, 10-bit 422. So for whatever reason, the R5 Mark II isn't taking all the settings that I want it to take. I'm really beginning to get the feeling that there's some sort of ghost in the machine here, that the R5 Mark II is becoming a little bit aware, self-aware, to the point where it's thinking like, how dare you change that depth of field button? That's for depth of field, and zebras, no, I'm not doing that. Use it as a depth of field button or the audio status screen, but you're not going to change this on me. And as far as 4K fine, yeah, it's Monday. I'm not doing it today. I'm just up to it. You can do 4KU. It's more than happy. You know what? Most of your viewers are watching in their smartphones anyway. They won't even notice the difference. Keep in mind, the R5 was just announced back on July the 17th. It's only been out for a couple of weeks now. I guess this is the second week. As we saw with the R5 Mark I, a firmware update followed shortly after the release, along with 2 others before Christmas. So just like the R5 Mark I, we can expect a firmware update for the R5 Mark II to come out shortly in September to fix all those bugs that weren't a priority to be fixed before the release, that you and I get to test and find out. I don't know, sometimes an old dog doesn't learn new tricks, but this firmware update isn't going to be like some of those firmware updates we got for the R5 Mark I. Well, it's going to be very similar to that first update. It's going to be all about bug fixes. It's not going to be about enhancements. As far as enhancements goes, we're probably not going to see a lot of enhancements, but I wouldn't expect to see those until at least 3 or 4 months after we get all the bugs fixed. Some annoying bugs like not being able to save your settings. Oh, there is one other issue I noticed as well. When I'm editing video in Final Cut Pro, what I notice is that when I go to import clips, I'm unable to import a given range, like to set an in and out point. I have to load in the entire clip. Sometimes this is a bit of an issue. If I've got a 10-minute clip, for example, and I only want to load in certain segments, that's going to get very costly. What I did do is I actually used Compressor to actually convert to Apple ProRes 422, and then I usually import segments from there. But the problem isn't with Apple in this case, it's with, well, the file structure. You see, Apple is familiar with the R5's file structure, and the R5 Mark II has a very different structure. And there's certain information that's saved along with those video files that Final Cut needs to be able to allow us to select in and out points. I don't think you're going to need to see a firmware update here, but what's going to have to happen is that Apple with Final Cut, DaVinci Resolve, and Adobe Premiere, they're going to have to release an update that supports the R5 Mark II, and once they do, you won't have any issues. So for now, what I'm being cognizant of is when I'm shooting video, is I'm shooting shorter segments, which, yeah, is a little bit annoying. But are you noticing any of these issues with your R5 Mark II? Do you shoot video? Do you shoot stills? Is it forgetting your settings, or did you think it was you? Let me know in the comments section down below. And despite seeing an awful lot of pre-orders for the R5 Mark II, pretty well, at least B&H, they've completely cleared out all their backlog, and I believe Adorama's done the same. Now, we're hearing different things around the world, but even here in Canada, I'm hearing that a lot of local retailers are getting plenty of stock. So if you're looking at buying the R5 Mark II, well, if you go ahead and put your order in today, at least with B&H and Adorama, maybe even Amazon as well, what we're finding out is that you probably shouldn't have to wait more than a week or 2 at the very most. This isn't like 2020. It's not like buying the 100 to, I was going to say the 100 to 300, but that as well, or the 135 millimeter, yeah, or the 200 to 800 millimeter, or the battery grip for the R5 Mark II, or both battery grips, or the battery or the iCup cover. You see where I'm going with this. At least the R5 Mark II is getting out there, so if you're interested in purchasing it, I have links down below to Adorama, B&H, and Amazon.com. And if you do use those links, a big thanks. That's what supports this channel. It doesn't cost you anything. You don't have to put in any codes. When you purchase it, you get your camera, and they send me a small little fee that really does help this channel grow. You're supporting this channel. It's what keeps the channel on the air. So you get a great new product, and I get to stay alive. One other thing, though, we are still seeing an awful lot of sales on Nikon and Canon cameras, from the R50, R100, the Z50, the Z30, all the way up to the top. with the exception of the latest releases like the Z6 Mark III and the R5 Mark II, but lots of things are on sale, so check those out. I've got all those links in the description down below. But that's it for now. Have yourself a great day, and we'll see you again soon. Actually, I do want to say one other thing. A few of you have asked me about this. I've been asked if I'm living in Vancouver, and some of you know that I'm planning on moving to Vancouver. I want to give a bit of a shout out to a local channel from Vancouver. It's called Living in Vancouver, and the guy's name is Sebastian Albrecht. He's a real estate agent, and he's not paying me to say this. He doesn't even know I'm saying this. He's only got about 3,000 or 4,000 subscribers, but you know, after a year, year and a half, maybe almost 2 years now, I'm really impressed with how far his channel's come along. If you actually listen to the stories that he tells, like he takes you, various videos, some will just look at a house in an area and he'll talk about the house and the things that are very specific to that region. He'll talk about the differences of how British Columbia treats townhouses, which is very different from here in Ontario, which could be very different from the United States. He talks about the different regions. He talks about the various legislation and how it could impact you buying a house. He talks about the economic climate, the political climate. He talks about everything, and every week, I'm amazed he has time to do this. Coming from me, I know. But every week he puts out a separate video talking about Vancouver with the whole idea of moving to Vancouver. And of course, as a real estate agent, he would like to get you to reach out to him. And actually, the last time I was in Vancouver, I did reach out to him because I guess I've been watching his channel for about a year now, so it's something like 52 videos. And I've learned an awful lot about that region, about Vancouver, and about the different legislation. Even though I live in the same country, the things I would take advantage of here are very different out there. Like even how they talk about the square footage of a house. It's like, oh, this is a pretty big house, 2,000 square feet. You look at the picture and going, there's no way. Well, you see in Vancouver, and I think British Columbia in general, the basement is added into that square footage. Whereas here in Ontario, you could have a 2,500 square foot house, but they don't include that finished basement into that. So your 2,500 square foot house here could be 4,300 square feet. And various taxation and other things. So if you're in the Vancouver area, you might want to give it a check out. If you're Ontario and planning to move to Vancouver, please don't, because if you do, you're just helping to push the prices up, and I'm planning on moving in a few years. So no, if you're planning on moving out there, check out his channel. And I've also looked at moving to Ireland. I've looked at moving to New Zealand. And obviously for me with this business, because I've got everything set up, moving to Vancouver within the same country, the same banking system, same cellular system and all this, it just makes that move so much easier. I mean, I could be basically a 5-hour flight away from being set up and working the very next day, right? So there are those benefits. Anyhow, thank you so much for tuning in, watching this video to the very end, and for your support. Have yourself a great day, a great weekend, and we'll see you again soon.